One, two, three. like sipping soda, through a straw like a snake. The things that made us happy don't make us happy no more. The things that made us funny don't make us funny no more. Like watching movies with friends from school, like drinking schnapps, peeing on the side of a stool, like tripping a dog, like tripping a cat, and tripping a baby. Yeah, I remember that. And the things that made us happy don't make us happy no more. The things that made us funny don't make us funny no more. The things that made us happy don't make us happy no more. The things that made us sad, well, they still make us sad, don't they? Happy don't make us happy no more. The things that made us glad don't make us glad no more. The things that made us happy don't make us happy no more. The things that made us hyper don't make us hyper no more. Like playing with blocks, like banging on plates, like sleeping outside, like staying up late, like drinking milk, like eating cake, like sipping soda, through a straw like a snake, like watching movies with friends from school, like drinking schnapps, peeing on the side of a stool, like tripping a dog, like tripping a cat, and tripping a baby. Yeah, I remember that. And the things that made us happy don't make us happy no more. The things that made us funny don't make us funny no more. The things that made us happy don't make us happy no more. The things that made us funny don't make us funny no more. song's over too? After only a minute and a half? Really? That's it? No. No. I don't know. We don't know. He don't know. No.